God bless America. Hello, everybody. I am the Talk Radio Protege. This is the Protege program. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. Today, we're going to talk about news that you're not going to hear from any of the other cable or mainstream news networks. Fox News is the only one carrying this story from what I can tell. And nobody else has even really taken notice besides from Drudge Report. GOP rep touches off firestorm, a firestorm that a lot of people in the mainstream media are apparently not noticing, with claim FBI leaked info, used stories to get FISA warrants. Now we're going to take a look at a little bit of this, and I'm just going to say that it hasn't been verified yet. This is still a debated claim, but if it's true, then it goes to it speaks to, rather, a culture of, or the culture of corruption, I think, that is going on in the FBI and in the establishment FBI and the Department of Justice. So let's have a look at what Fox News is reporting. A Republican congressman, Mark Meadows, touched off a firestorm Tuesday after claiming on Twitter that his office had information suggesting the FBI leaked information to the press and used the resulting articles to help obtain surveillance warrants. We've learned new information suggesting our suspicions are true. FBI DOJ have previously leaked information to the press and then used those same press stories as a separate source to justify FISA's. Unreal. Tomorrow's Bruce Orr interview is even more critical. Did he ever do this? The claim stemmed in part from FBI intelligence analyst Jonathan Moffa's Friday testimony behind closed doors before the House Judiciary and Oversight Committees. But what exactly Moffa told the committees is a matter of dispute, and this is why the claim is unverified, because the top source in the claim testified behind closed doors, and of course probably isn't allowed to tell the public or to say in a venue which will ultimately get to the public the things that he said in that closed door testimony. Fox News is reporting that a source with knowledge of the testimony said FBI personnel would use media reports based on information they leaked to justify applications for FISA warrants, echoing Meadows. The source said Moffa, who worked with controversial FBI officials Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, acknowledged this, quote, had been a practice in the past. But other FBI officials and other government officials are pushing back, telling Fox News the initial claims about Moffa's testimony were incorrect. So, here's what we've got so far. Allegedly, Jonathan Moffa's testimony suggests that the practice of leaking information to the press and then using the press story as a justification to obtain warrants to further investigate the information was a practice in the past. That is unverified at this time, simply based on the fact that John Moffa testified behind closed doors and that testimony hasn't been released to the press. Only drips and drabs of it have. Let's continue to read. I think I do want to skip past some of this stuff, and I want to get to the point that I think is it lends itself, that this story existing, not the story that we're talking about, but a separate story existing, lends credence to the claim that the FBI leaks information to the press and then uses the stories that the press generates to claim that there is corroboration that deserves a FISA warrant. It's on down here a little bit in the story. Let's read it right here. The Trump dossier, which contains salacious allegations about the then presidential candidate, was compiled by ex-British spy Christopher Steele. Steele, who is also working as an FBI source, had been hired by research firm Fusion GPS to compile details for the dossier, which was funded by the Clinton campaign and the Democrat National Committee. One source familiar with Moffa's testimony told Fox News that his statements raised concern that the Bureau indeed used this practice with the dossier, referencing an article written by Yahoo News' Michael Isikoff. Now, You might not remember, but because it was all the way back in 2016. We got to get in our time machines and travel back in time a couple years. The Isikoff article was published in September 2016, focusing on Page's July 2016 trip to Moscow. That's Carter Page, a person who is within the Trump campaign orbit. And you'll remember, it doesn't take a lot to get involved to reach the Trump orbit as far as the Democrats and the Mueller investigation goes. According to a House GOP memo earlier this year, the Isikoff article did not corroborate the Steele dossier, as the article was derived from information leaked by Steele himself to Yahoo News. Yet the subsequent FISA application to spy on Page cited the Isikoff article, among other pieces of evidence. Now, you'll remember, you might remember, we talked about this in a previous video, it's been a little while, that Christopher Steele, while he was an informant with the FBI, or while he was working as an informant for the FBI, was talking to the media and giving them information that he wasn't supposed to give them. It's one of the reasons he was terminated as an FBI informant. And he did speak to Yahoo News. He testified in British court that he did speak to Yahoo News. So it's not unfair, I think, to conclude that the information Christopher Steele gave to Yahoo News was used to write the Yahoo News article, and then the FBI said the article corroborates the Steele dossier, which would not be true because the information coming from the Steele dossier and the Yahoo News article share a source. That is Christopher Steele. So one does not corroborate the other. It's like saying... Let me try to think of an example as we go on. Oh, okay, here's an example. It's the argument that atheists use when arguing with Christians is you only believe what you believe because the Bible told you that the Bible is true. And it's circular reasoning. Christopher Steele can't corroborate his own story by leaking information of his story to another news source. That's not corroborating the story. That becomes circular reasoning. So, did the FBI use this information, use the dossier and the Yahoo News story, which share a source, and say that one corroborates the other in their FISA application? That I'm not 100% sure about. It could be the case. We know that the FISA applications that the FBI submitted were heavily based on the Steele dossier, but also cited a few other sources, specifically news stories. So it could be that the FBI cited both the Steele dossier and a Yahoo News article whose prime source for information was Christopher Steele to get a FISA warrant. That might not be the case, but I do know one time that the DOJ used info that it created and leaked to get what they wanted. It's not a FISA application, but it's actually much worse. You all will probably remember this story. In fact, you'll probably know where I'm going as soon as I tell you who the characters are. James Comey was the FBI director for a few months under President Trump. Apparently, while he was FBI director, he recorded and memorialized meetings that he had with the president in the form of memos. After he was fired from his job as FBI director, James Comey allowed these memos to fall into the hands of a friend of his who was a professor at a university. That professor, in turn, delivered those memos to the mainstream media. The Department of Justice, upon hearing the reports from the mainstream media, used these reports and the memos and their alleged contents to hire Robert Mueller to be the special prosecutor, the special investigator into the Trump-Russia collusion. Later on, in his book and in a television interview, or maybe not that extreme, but certainly, if I remember correctly, before in testimony, sworn testimony before Congress, James Comey admitted that he did those things, that he took those memos, which by definition would be classified information, turned them over to his professor friend, and told him to leak them to the mainstream media for the purpose of having a special prosecutor appointed by the Department of Justice. This is a version of making a news story out of information that you want to investigate further, and then claim that the media stories corroborate the information that you want to investigate for the sake of getting a warrant so that you can investigate that information. This is like being judge, jury, and prosecutor. It's not quite judge, jury, and executioner, but it's definitely judge, jury, and prosecutor. You've taken independent branches of the justice system and fused them together into one, which is highly unjust and should not have been done by the United States Department of Justice, but apparently it was. I want to hear what your thoughts are on this issue. That's going to do it for this video. Let me know in the comments what you think about this. Do you think that this is a false flag that's meant to distract people? Do you think that this is that these are rumors that should not be reported on because they're rumors? Do you think that there is a possibility that Mark Meadows is not just making up information out of his butt in order to make a good headline? Leave a like, hit subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications if you want to see more videos like it in the future. I hope that you'll come back and join me next time. Don't forget, you need to be checking back every day because you never know what shenanigans are going on with YouTube and their algorithm. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you'll join me next time. Until then, good night and God bless.